So now that we've got our timber down from our roof storage, and we'll just show you all the parts that we'll be using to make up this instrument. And so starting off, first of all, we've got a nice piece of ash here that we're going to be using for the body, and we've got some lovely straight grain all along the edge here and some very nice cathedral grain up here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tying this body in half. So this will be one half of the body and this will be the other half. So we'll be cutting it down something like that, and this part will flip around and glue onto here, so we'll have a nice straight grain all the way through the centre of the guitar, and then the more interesting cathedral grain patterns will make up the either edge. So that'll be our body. Moving on now, we've got a nice piece of maple here that's going to make up our neck, and we should be able to get probably 2 necks out of this. So when we're laying this out, we'll probably lay it out for 2 necks. We'll probably route out for 2 truss rod channels and that, just to use up the wood while we have it, rather than having to do it later on a different instrument. But we'll of course just be using the 1 neck. And we've got some Stumac cryo wire here we'll be using for our fret wire, and we've got our adjustable truss rod here. And again, this is a piece we had lying over from a different project, and this is a fretboard that's already been radiused, and it also has its fret slots cut already. So this is going to be our fretboard. Then we've got our black dot markers to go on the fretboard. So we're using up a lot of material we have lying around and that just to get this instrument built. Here's all our hardware. So we've got our pickguard, our neck pickup, our tuners there. We've got our bridge pickup, our output jack, all our mounting screws and that. We've got a control plate here that's already pre-wired, and our strap locks. We might come back to the control plate and we might change over the pots or maybe the capacitors or something like that, we'll see. But that's pretty much all the material that we're going to be using when we're making the instrument. And in terms of finishing, what we're going to do with the ash body is just like we did with Brenco's base build. We're going to be using a Japanese technique called Shoshugi ban, and that involves us basically burning the instrument. So we'll be hitting the body up with a blow lamp to scorch the surface, and then we just brush out all of the soot and that. And then we come back with some Crimson Guitars finishing oil just to finish off the surface of it. So that's the plan of what we intend on doing, and we've got all our materials here. We think maybe might be 1 or 2 little pieces we haven't thought of yet, but that should be the whole thing. And so next what we're going to do is we're going to mark out our wood to get ready to begin the build. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out our body, and we're just going to use an acrylic template we have here. This is from Guitars and Woods in Portugal, absolutely fantastic company, and this is brilliant for lining up where you want to be able to see the grain, because you can actually see through it, as opposed to an MDF template where you can't. So we're just lining up this roughly on the center line and with our edge of the wooden board here, but this is just rough at the moment. We will be coming back to properly mark it out once we have it off the bandsaw on that. So this is just to give us a rough indication of what the body's going to look like. So we're just drawing around the edge here, and so that lets us know where the top half of our body is. And as we said, this piece is going to be glued on to the other part. So if we just take our template and we flip it around, then we can then mark out where the bottom half of the body is going to be. And same thing again, we're just roughly on the center line and with the edge of the board, and we're just going to again draw around the body just to give us a rough idea of how it's going to look. And as we said, this lets us see where our grain lines are and how parts might end up looking. So with that, we can see now for this part of the body we've got this nice cathedral grain up here, which will be just where the sort of forearm part of the body would be. And so that's going to look quite nice, and then we've got nice straight grain all the way through the center of the body, giving us good stability. So we can cut our body here, and then we can take this part and flip it around so these 2 surfaces will glue to each other, and that should give us our body blank then. And then we've got some spare at the end here we can cut off as well. So what we're going to do now is, now that we've got that laid out, we're going to break out our chop saw and just cut these parts off and get ready to start gluing up the body. So that's our two body pieces after they've come off the chop saw, and you can see we've got an almost invisible line that follows the grain pattern there. So just so we can catch it in the light, you might be able to see where we marked out the body, just there, and it all comes together just here. So this is our seam line here, and you can't even feel it because these two pieces have already been milled. They've been through a thicknesser and a planer and a jointer, so I've got lots of nice flat edges all ready to go together. So what we can do now is put that straight into our clamps and then glue our body blank up. So we've got our two body pieces ready, and we've got all our clamps here ready to go. So we're just going to start putting some glue on, and this is a Type Bond 3 Ultimate. So I'm just going to give a good squeeze of glue on both surfaces, and then we'll spread that out and take off any excess. So that's a decent amount on both surfaces, so we should get some good adhesion there. So just putting off our excess glue, and then we'll just put our pieces down. I just get them together and just kind of squish them backwards and forwards, and it kind of helps the two pieces of wood grab each other. So we're just tightening up the bottom ones down, and again just moving these slightly backwards and forwards to ensure we have a good bite. That's all our clamps nice and tight, so just going to get a damp cloth here, and we're going to get rid of all this glue squeeze out so we don't have to try and deal with it once it goes hard later on. And that'll be our body blank all glued up and ready to go. So with the body blank gluing up, what we're going to do now is move on to the neck. So again, we've got our clear acrylic template here from Guitars and Woods in Portugal, a fantastic company as I've already said, and we've just drawn a centre line here, which is going to be the centre line for our neck, and we'll take all our measurements off that, and that centre line is parallel to this edge, which will also make it very easy when we're routing our truss rod cavity. So we're just going to use that centre line now, and we're just going to use this acrylic template to match it up to the centre line on the template to give us an idea of what our neck will look like and what the grain pattern will be like. And there's some kind of nice bird's eye grain patterns in this, so we're trying to incorporate some of them into the headstock here. So we're just lined up here and lined up here, so we're just going to again draw around our template, and this should be almost exactly what the neck is going to be like. There shouldn't be much of a difference at all. You see we've got marks on this template for where our dot markers are going to go, but we're not actually going to follow those because we're using the pre-made fretboard that we already have, so we want to take our own markings rather than trying to follow what's already there, just in case there are any differences. And so now that's our neck drawn out. I'll just take it in and show you that. So here you can see our headstock shape of our neck, and these are some of this nice bird's eye we're trying to incorporate into the headstock. Then we've got the rest of our neck shape here, and we've got our centre line. So what we're going to do next is we're going to work out where our nut line is going to be, and then where the truss rod is going to end, and we'll be able to mark out and measure that up, and then we'll get ready to route out our truss rod cavity. So we're just marking out now where our truss rod is going to go. So we already have our centre line, and then we're just marking our start and stop points for our router. So we've got that marked out here for here, and our router is going to stop here because we'll need to carve out this bit because it's a little bit wider. So between this point and this point is what we're going to have to route out to make a channel for the truss rod to go in. So we'll just be using a straight bit in our router cutter, and as I said, we're going to be using this edge as our guide, so we won't need any bearings or anything, and this will just run straight down and just cut out a nice clean channel there that we'll be able to slot our truss rod into. So now with our truss rod slot cut and our neck all marked out, we're going to take this over to the bandsaw and we're going to cut this just very close to the line, but not right on top of it. So our neck is off the bandsaw, and we've just reattached our acrylic template here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our homemade table router, and we're going to just buzz around all the edge here and get our final dimensions. So the body has had a couple of days to dry, so we're now just going to take off all the clamps. And this is glued up pretty well. So we now have our body blank ready to go. So next thing we're going to do is we're just going to mark out our shape again for the final time, and we're going to take it over to the bandsaw and start to cut away a lot of the excess material around the sides. So this is our body after it's come off the bandsaw, and you can see we've cut it as close as we can kind of to the lines, just to give the router as little work to do as possible. So that's our next task. We'll reattach the template on, and we'll route out the final body shape. So we finished routing out our body shape here, and so we've got our body blank ready to go. We also have our neck blank as well, routed out and ready to go. So what we're going to do next is we're going to mark out where the neck pocket is, and we're going to cut that out and just test fit the whole thing together and see how we go from there. So we've got a mark here for how far in we want the neck to sit into the body. So we just use that as an indicator, and we just mark around the back here, and then we just draw around the neck. We've got everything lined up with our centre lines here to ensure we're nice and straight. So we just draw around the neck, and that looks to be about right. So that's the area we're going to be taking material away. So we've got a template here as well that's roughly the same shape as that neck. So we'll just double check this and go on our centre lines, and we'll see that lines up perfectly. So what we'll do now is we'll start hogging away some of the material in here, and then we'll come back with our router and cut out the neck pocket nice and neat, and then we'll start to fit the neck properly. So now that we've hogged away most of the material there for the neck pocket, we can come back and attach our template. Here we'll stick that down with some super glue and masking tape, and then we can just use our router and we'll come in and clean up the whole pocket and go down to the depth we need as well. So we've got our neck pocket fully routed out here now, so we can test fit our neck in, and it's a nice snug fit there. And because we now know everything lines up perfectly along our centre line, we can get our fingerboard on, and then we can start to lay out where we want our pickups and our electronics to be. Okay, so now with the neck out of the way, we can attach our body template back on. And again, as I said already, probably this is from Guitars and Woods in Portugal. Absolutely fantastic, brilliantly well made, and just such a time saver to have something so accurate. So we just line this up with our centre line, and just like we did with the neck pocket, and we'll draw out what cavities we're going to be using, and then just like with the neck pocket, we can use our pillar drill then, and we'll hog out as much of the material as we can, and then come back with the router and clean everything up. So we'll just run ahead with all that now. So that's all our cavities drilled out. We've taken away as much of the material as we can. So just like with the neck pocket, we'll come back and we'll attach our template on, and then we'll route out our 3 cavities here. So that's our body completely routed out, and we've got our cavities routed out here as well for our 2 pickups and for our controls. So the next piece of work we have to do is more routing, and we're going to put a round over on both edges. So that's the round over done on the top and back. So we just need to do some sanding on the front and back. And if you're wondering why I haven't gone to the trouble of sanding away a lot of the burn marks and stuff like that, well, guess what's going to come next with the body. So we're getting ready to glue our fretboard on, and we've just got it clamped in place. We've got everything lined up with all our centre lines and that on the front and back. And in order to make sure the fretboard doesn't move around when we're gluing it in and stuff like that, what we're going to do is we're going to drill 2 small holes, just a small one here and another one down around here somewhere, and through those holes we're just going to press in a little cocktail stick, and that will go through the fretboard and into the neck, and we can use them as pins to secure the fretboard when it's being glued down properly, so that it doesn't move at all when it's being glued. So we're just going to drill those holes now just to line everything up. So that's our holes drilled, and just to show you, we'll be doing something like that. So we've got a registration mark, so that when we go to put on our fretboard we know exactly where it has to go and it won't be able to shift in either direction. So we're just continuing to work on the neck now at the moment, and we're going to drill out our tuner holes now, just while we have everything nice and square and that. And so we're just going to take it over to the drill press and drill out some 10mm holes. And just to prevent the back blowing out, we've got an old off-cut neck here, so we'll just keep them together, and it means we can drill through without the drill bursting through on the back. So we'll just drill that out now. So there we have our 6 holes now, all nice and clean, and as we said, we didn't get any blowout at the back by using that other neck. So just checking our tuners here, and they fit in absolutely perfectly. So we're perfectly sized there. So the next thing we have to do is thickness down the headstock, so we'll just be taking a few mil off the front here. So I'll head over to the bandsaw and just take a slice off there. Okay, so we're getting ready to glue our fretboard on now. So we've got our truss rod in place. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tape over the truss rod to make sure no glue gets into the cavity and causes us any issues. Then we've got our 2 small little cocktail stick pins here that we'll put in the holes we drilled earlier. Then we'll be able to position our fretboard on top using those holes, and then we'll just get the whole thing clamped up and we should be good to go. So we'll just go through this process very quickly now. So we've just taped up our truss rod there to make sure no glue gets in, and we've just put in our 2 little pieces of cocktail stick here for alignment, and we can just double check that. So that'll go on there nicely, so we can get our glue on now and get ready to clamp the whole thing up then. So that's our glue on, so it's time to get our fretboard in place now. So So this is where our alignment pins come in, because with all that glue in place we don't have the fretboard moving around or squishing around as we start to clamp it up as well. It'll just keep it there. The clamps off, and we realised we never filmed putting the clamps on or taking them off, but basically we clamped everything down. We put another piece of wood on top just to hold everything together, then put all our clamps on. So next what we're going to do is we're going to just take it over to the bandsaw and we'll start to trim off some of the excess here on the sides and at the back. So as you've just seen, we just gave the sides a quick buzz with the router there, and that just makes the whole thing completely smooth all the way along on both sides. So now we've two other jobs to do on the neck, and that's to work this transition here from the headstock to where the fretboard is. So we'll just put a nice curve on that there, and then we have to decide what we're going to do with inlays. Okay, so we're just coming over to the spindle sander here to work in that transition. And we've just glued a block to the side of the neck here just to keep things nice and flat. So we'll just be moving in the piece like that, and this all keeps it nice and square, and we'll just take away some material until we get a nice transition. So I'll be putting on my PPE, so I'll bring you back when we start doing it. So that's our headstock transition, all nicely rounded in. Still a bit more refinement to do, but we're not going to get it too clean because we have some fiery ideas for the headstock. So we still have our inlays to do, and then the overall shaping of the neck still to come. So we're just getting ready to mark out our inlays here, and lucky enough we have this Crimson Guitar fret scale ruler, and it actually has all the marking for where your inlay and side dots are. So we just have to make sure we're choosing the right scale length. We line this up with all our frets, and it's absolutely bang on. And so with that we can then just mark our center points, so we know exactly that our side dots will be right in between two frets, just like we require. So then we can now use these markings we have on the side as a guide for where we're going to do all our side dots. And on the top, what we do then is we take our frets, we have our centre line remarked, and we just use a ruler and we just mark a diagonal across from fret to fret, and just gives us a little point in the centre, just to show you again, from one fret to the other, making sure we're bang on, and we just put a little mark, and that then gives us a small X then, and that's exactly where we're going to put our inlay, and we're going with black dots for this. So you can see we've got our inlays marked out now, and on the side as well we've got them marked here as well. So we're just going to drill all those out now, and then we'll install our inlays. So what we do now is we just take a drop of super glue, let that soak in, Then we take our plastic 3mm material and we just push that down and in. And then a quick squirt of activator. And we just leave that to dry for a few seconds and we'll move on to the next one. So now that we've given the glue on these side dots a while to dry, we'll just come back with a flush cutters here and we'll just cut them in nice and close to the surface. So there we have our black side dots installed. A little bit of sanding still to do, but we still have the neck to shape as well, so that'll take care of most of that. So that's done, and next we'll move on to our fretboard markers. So we've got our drill press set up here, and we're just going to drill down now for our fretboard inlays. And we just have our depth stop set as well, so it's only going to kiss the surface, and we can just come back and keep going down the more we need. So we'll just get cracking on now. So just like we did with the side dots, we'll just be putting in a drop of glue, putting in one of our black dots, and then giving it a quick spray with some accelerator and leaving it all to set up. So we'll just crack on with that now. So just giving them a little bit of an encouragement to go in, and we'll just keep going and get them all in. So we've got our 16-inch radius block here, and so we're just going back over the fretboard just to smooth it out, take down the tops of the dot inlays and that, and just smooth the whole thing out, and that should be her ready for fretting. Okay, so we've just finished re-radiusing the board there with our 16-inch radius block, and then we've just given it a rub down with some steel wool as well, and we've got a lovely smooth fretboard now. So the next job, we have to fret the instrument and we have to actually shape the neck then. So we're moving on to fretting the instrument, and we're going to use some Stumac cryo wire, and we use our fret benders here. So fret wire starts off as just a long strip of fret wire here, and so what we do is we pass it through this fret bender here, and it just starts to curl it ever so slightly, and so we do that a few times, adjusting it until we get it to the curvature we want. So as we said, our neck is going to be a 16-inch radius, so we'll just pass this through a few times until we get a slightly tighter curve, and we'll keep comparing it against the edge of the neck then, and we'll be able to see when we've curved it enough. So we just take our fret wire now and we hold it in place roughly where it's going to go, and then we can just snip off as much as we need. And then we just have our little number tray here so we know which fret is which, and we just keep working our way down the line until we have all our frets ready. Just leaving a small overhang either side so we have enough just to trim it all up nice and flush. So before we put our frets in, we're just taking a small triangular file and we're just filing a slight bevel just on top of the fret slot, and that will just allow the frets to seat in a lot easier when we bring them over to the press. And it just means as well, if the frets have to come out, it means there's very little chance of the edge chipping if we just take it away. So we'll just quickly do that. So we're going to start putting our frets in now, and what we're going to do first is we'll take the syringe of glue and we'll just squirt a small amount into the fret slot. We'll put our fret in, and then we'll use our fret caul here. This is an air drill press, and we'll just use that to press the fret into place. Just hold it for a few seconds and then move on to the next one, and we'll just do them all that way until we have all our frets in. We'll just get cracking now. We'll take our first fret, just put it roughly where we want. Then we'll take our fret press here, we'll just hold it in the appropriate place, and then we just use that to fully seat our fret. And this is why we're fretting first before shaping the neck, so we have a nice flat surface on the neck so we can do all this and we can shape afterwards. So that's our first fret in, and now we can move on to our next one. So that's all our frets in now, and we've cleaned off any glue, that residue and stuff like that might have been on it. So our next task is going to be, we're going to snip down all the ends here. So we're just taking a file here that we have encased in this piece of wood, and it's nice and flat, so we're just using that to take off the sharp fret ends, and we're just doing that so we don't cut our hands when we're shaping the neck. We'll come back afterwards and do the actual fret work once the neck has been shaped. So we're going to move on to actually shaping the neck now. And we've got all our marks here on the neck of what material we're going to remove. I won't bore you with all the maths and all the measurements and stuff we've done. I'll link to a video from Fletcher's Handcrafted Guitars. He does an absolutely excellent video about how to mark out a neck, especially a Strat Tele style neck like this. But basically we've got our lines along the side, and we've got lines on top, and basically they tell us where we can just start hogging out material, and they create facets then, and then we just keep doing that until we get things smoother and smoother. Marks like here, the transitions and stuff, as I said, Fletcher explains that great, and down at the end as well. We leave most of that until we're getting closer, and we just smooth that out towards the end. So basically what we're going to do next is, we've got two big chunks along the side here, and we're just going to hog out that material. So as we said, we're literally just hogging off a lot of material here, so just using a Shinto saw rasp, and we'll just really just hack at this and try and take off as much as possible. So just to bring it in a little bit close and show you what we've done so far. So we've got a line marked here, and we have a line marked up here, and we've just taken away all that material there. And we're going to do the same on the other side. And as you can see, we're slowly starting to get all our different edges here to create more and more of them, and slowly but surely rounding over the back of the neck. So we'll just keep going. As we said, we'll take off the other side, and then we'll start to remove more of these facets, create more angles, and start to smooth out the whole thing. So we still have a little bit more sanding to do on that just to get it completely smooth, but that's pretty much our neck done. It's been nicely rounded over. As we said, we're going to come back and do our fret job and that. A little bit more sanding, smooth out some of these transitions a little bit more, but it's a nice smooth comfortable neck, not too chunky, not too thin, and it's very much like a D-shaped kind of profile. You know, you can carve it a different way. People favour a V or a C or any other kind of a profile, or a compound profile, whatever, but it's nice and comfortable, and that's pretty much our neck done now. So we're going to work on our neck attachment now, and rather than using a neck plate, which I've said before I hate, we're going to use some ferrules on the back and just some standard bolts then. So I've actually marked the position we want these ferrules to go, so we're just going to drill a small pilot hole first to mark the location, and then we'll come back with our much larger bit and just go down a few mil, just enough to have these sit in flush with the surface. So we'll head over to the drill press now and do that. So we've got our drill set up and we've got a depth stop set on it, so the drill can't go any further than that amount, so that means we can't go too deep at these holes, so we'll just go ahead and drill them now. So that's our 4 holes drilled, and we can just test fit the ferrules there, and they all fit nice and flush. So we can just pop these back out, and so that's the neck pocket almost ready. And that was our output jack hole drilled. So that's right through. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to drill a hole straight through to allow our wires to have access, and then another hole across into our control cavity. So hopefully I've corrected myself in the video edit and pointed out what a dumbass I am, but we were just working out our bridge position here off our scale length when we realised that we've actually routed for a standard Telecaster bridge with a standard tele pickup, and not this bridge that we're using, which is going to take a humbucker. So luckily enough our bridge is large enough that it should hide that hole completely, and we can route out a little bit more wood to fit the humbucker, but this is the bridge we're going to be using. So luckily enough that mistake will be hidden and we'll just about get away with it. So we just switched the lights off at the moment, and that's just to help you see our laser here that we're just using to make sure everything is completely straight. So we're going right up the centre of the body, up the centre of the neck, and we have our bridge position marked here for 25.5 inches for our scale length, so we can move our bridge backwards and forwards just to get it nicely lined up, just to make sure everything is completely straight. That's our neck and body now connected. So next what we can do is work on our string alignment. So we're just working on our string alignment here, just making sure we have the bridge in the right place. So we're just using a combination of our laser to check the bridge saddle is in line with where the temporary nut slot is going to be. That just gives us a quick visual indication, and we're also just using a spare string as well to line it up over the saddle and over the nut as well to make sure we're going to be okay. So we are alright, and we've got all our marks here, so we're going to drill and then mark out and then drill for the bridge to go in. So we're just lining up our bridge with some marks we've previously made, and then with that in place we can just mark out exactly where our holes are going to be, and we can drill those now and then secure the bridge in place. So because we're using this bridge and not the original Telecaster bridge we thought we were using, it's not actually a top load of this bridge, it's a string through. So we're going to leave the bridge in place and we'll use these holes here as our template for drilling through the body. So we've got our drill set up, and we've got the body on top of a backing board, so as the drill bit goes through it doesn't blow out through the back and cause any chips or anything. We'll be taking things nice and slowly, trying to see if we can, just as the drill bit is about to poke through the back, we can flip the body over and drill from the other side. Hopefully that works. And as I said, we're going to take it nice and slow. It might be a bit difficult to see with this part of the bridge here, but we'll just take it nice and slow and drill through. This is one operation I hate doing, just in case things don't go straight, but we'll plow on through and see what happens. So we're just showing you the back of the body now that we've started drilling, and we've just drilled enough so that the tip of the drill bit is just poking through the back. You can just about see some of the fibres starting to break open there. So with that we can then just come back with our little punch here, and we can just start the hole on this side, and so it means we can come back with our drill bit and drill from this side to match up the two holes, and it means we shouldn't get any tear out or chip out along this side. So we're just about to start the fun bit, and we've given the guitar a good sand, and we've also sanded the neck as well, right up to a high grit, and we haven't filmed that because watching people sand stuff is insanely boring and painful. So now we're getting ready for the good part, and we've rubbed the body down with some white spirit to pull out any dust and that, and we've let that all evaporate off for a good few hours and that, and we've got a hook inserted, so we're going to hang the body up now and we're going to torch it. Hi, it's Robbie here from Brenco Guitars. I just want to say thanks to everybody who's been watching the series so far. This is now our final part. Special thanks going out to my nephew Connor Mangan, who watches all our videos, to Pshink, I think I'm pronouncing his name properly, who's been watching our videos, and as well to Brendan Murphy over in Albany, New York, who's going to be doing a similar build of his own soon. So thanks all for watching, and we'll cut now to the guy setting fire to the guitar. So we've got our body hanging up now. It's by a chain just in case anything catches fire. We've got our fire extinguisher off to one side, we've got a bucket of water, and we're going to be wearing all our safety equipment and that. And just to note, when we do torch it, if we can just make out, this is the centre line of the guitar just here. As that's a glue seam and this is a two-piece body, when we do torch it, that seam is going to open up slightly. So we'll be taking it nice and easy right around the centre section. And if it does open up a little bit, we may come back with some filler or something like that, or some black super glue if it's very noticeable. We may not need to. So there's nothing else to say other than
fire, 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 fire.
So now we have one very crispy guitar, so completely charred all over. So we'll leave that to cool off a little bit before we move on to the next stage. So we're completely done, and like I said, if you can just make it out, you can see our center seam has opened a small bit, so we may come back and remedy that. But other than that, that's the guitar burned, and our next stage will be, we'll scrape all the soot off the surface and then we'll oil the body. So now that we've let the body cool down a bit, we're going to take a wire brush and we're just following along the grain, and we're just pushing all the soot that's now built up from inside the grain lines. So you can see as we do that, it takes out the soot and it actually makes things a little bit darker as well, which is what we're going for. So we're using Crimson Guitars penetrating guitar finishing oil. So we'll just put on a nice amount of this and just rub it all in. So after several coats of oil, this is our body, and we've got lots of lovely different shades of kind of brown and reds coming through, as well as the black. So that's the body pretty much done. We've got our neck sanded, so we'll now start to finally put the instrument together. So we're just going to do all our fretwork and some minor work to the neck as well, and so we'll bring you back when that's all done. But you can see we've got our various tools here, making sure the fretboard is level, making sure the frets are level, crowned, dressed and polished, etc. And we'll bring you back when all that work is done.
Well, Uncle Rob, them frets are really shiny. Uncle Rob is putting on the headstock decal.
So we're just installing our tuners now. So we're just using a straight edge and just giving them a little tip here and there to make sure that it's all nice and straight and all pressed in. So we can just flip those over and we can add our hardware then. And we'll get these all tightened up and then we'll work on the screws on the back. So we're just getting ready to drill our screw holes here at the back of the tuners, and we've just got our drill set up here, and we've just got a little piece of tape here as a depth stop to make sure we don't go too far. So as we start to drill in, this will tell us when we've gone far enough. So we'll just work our way along all the holes here, and we know exactly when to stop. So we know now that's the exact depth we require for each of the screw holes. So we'll just keep going on ahead with each one. So we're just starting to put our screws in here, and we're just using the tweezers here, and we're just dipping them in some guitar grease, just a small amount, and then just placing that into the hole and then getting things started. And then we can just send them home now, and that little bit of grease just makes things a whole lot easier for the screws to go in, because these are very small screws and the last thing you want is to try and force them and have one of the screws break. So with the tuners in place, and we've just glued in our nut here with a small drop of super glue. We've made that bone nut ourselves. It's an entire process that we're not going to cover in this video series, but that essentially means our neck is ready to go on. So we can put that to one side now, and we can start to focus on the body and all the hardware to go in. So first thing we're doing to the body is shielding the cavities, and we're just using this copper foil here, and we've got some copper tape, etc. as well. And so we're just taking off pieces of that and sticking it in place, and we'll just go around all three cavities and do that. And we just leave a small lip of it sitting above the surface, and that will come into contact with the shielding on the underside of the bridge the underside of the pickguard and on the control cavity cover as well, and that'll give us a nice shielded cavity. So that's our 3 cavities all shielded, and this is the back of our pickguard. So the theory is that with all this copper foil in contact, it makes kind of like a Faraday cage and prevents interference getting in, and with the bridge being made of metal and the control cavity, they don't need shielding on the back. So that's the idea behind it. So we'll just press on ahead now in the next few parts going in. And so what we're doing now is we're just taking our drill press and we're just using that to push the ferrules in. And we just need to go a little higher. So that's pressed in nice and hard and flush, and we'll just keep going on with the next ones. Okay, so we're ready to start assembling everything. So we've got our pickguard here and we've got our neck pickup installed. So we can just run our 2 wires from this through this channel in the body that we drilled earlier. So that fits on nicely, and as we said, we haven't drilled any of these holes yet for the pickguard, just in case we need to move things around a small bit, just to accommodate the neck and everything else. So we're just going to run the wires just to be ready. And once we get everything wired up and we know everything's working, then we can start to secure everything down in its final position. So that's our neck pickup wires run completely straight into our cavity here. So they're ready to be soldered up. And next we're going to run our ground wire through, and then we'll install our bridge. So the next part we'll be putting a ground wire through. So we just have our ground wire here, and we just snip off small part at the end here, and we just spread the cable out there a bit, and then we can run the other part through the body. So we now also have our bridge ground run through, and we can just leave this here with this wire exposed, and that will make contact with the bridge when it's screwed down, and that will ground our entire guitar. So we've got most of our electronics wired up already. As we said, we were using up some spare parts we had, so we already had this pre-wired control plate, but it's very much straightforward for a Telecaster. So we're just tinning up some of the terminals. And then we're just adding there, as I said, we've got our bridge pickup here, so we've got our hot and our ground, so it's just a case of soldering them in place. Same again for the neck pickup and then our bridge ground as well, so it's relatively straightforward, and we'll just go through it very quickly. So just before we secure everything in place, we're just giving our electronics a quick test. So our bridge pickup is working, so is our neck pickup, neck pickup only, bridge pickup only, and we'll just test for our volume. And then tone. So that means all our electronics are working, the switches are working, the output jack is working, so we can just get set to secure everything right into place now. So with all those other bits in place now, we can now get the scratch plate properly secured down. So we can just go around each of our holes, and we'll drill those out and then screw them in. So our final job is going to be install the string trees. So what we're going to do is off camera, we're going to string up the instrument, then we'll bring it back to install the string trees. So we're just going to put our string tree in place, and we've got our screw already pushed through, and we've put some more grease on the end of this little screw as well, because we definitely don't want a screw like this breaking off in the headstock. It would be very bad. So we'll just get that started. And then we just make sure we have the orientation correct. And then we can just make sure we send it home and keep it straight. And here we have the finished guitar. So we've got our maple neck and fretboard, black dot markers. Our body is ash, and you saw us burning it. We got our humbucker in the bridge, single coil in the neck, standard controlled black pickguard. On the back we've got our ferrules holding everything in place. Again, string ferrules, our lovely burnt black finish, our maple neck, our tuners, strap buttons, and she's all ready to go. We'll just give her a quick setup as well, just to make sure she's absolutely perfect. But that is the final guitar.